Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into the secret language of video games. We're talking about the art and science behind what makes a story truly stick with you, and why, believe it or not, the best stories are often the ones you never actually read.
So let me just start with a question for you. When you think of a really great game story, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of us, right, it's the obvious stuff. You think of that sharp, witty dialogue, those epic quests, maybe even just cool names for items and characters. And look, that's definitely part of it, but it's a huge misconception that this is the whole picture. It's really just the tip of the iceberg. Because the truth is, the most powerful, the most memorable storytelling in games, it often has absolutely nothing to do with text at all. It's actually built into the world around you, woven directly into the experience itself. And that right there, that's the core idea of narrative design. It's a completely different way of thinking. The goal isn't just to write a script for you to follow along with. No, it's to build an entire experience, to be an architect for a world where a story can be discovered and, really lived. So what does a narrative designer actually do all day if they're not just hunched over a keyboard writing dialogue? Well, to get it, it's super important to understand the difference between two very distinct jobs.
Here's a good way to think about it. The screenwriter? They're like the author of a book, carefully crafting every single word. The narrative designer, though, they're the architect of the entire building the story takes place in. They design the hallways, the lighting, the feeling you get when you walk into a room, all to make sure you experience that story in the most powerful way possible.
This famous quote from the legend himself, Sid Meier, the guy who created Civilization, it just gets right to the heart of it. A narrative designer's main job is to create those interesting choices, which means their most important tool isn't Microsoft Word. It's the entire game engine, the whole shebang.
All right, so let's get into the toolkit. Let's take a look at how these designers build these incredibly rich stories, a lot of the time without using a single line of dialogue.
So first up, let's just talk about everything you see. Think about the level design in a game like Dead Space. Those cramped, blood-stained corridors, they just scream a story of absolute horror and desperation long before you read any text logs. Or what about the look of pure rage in Sylvanas' eyes? You don't need a single word to know what she's feeling. Even the user interface, like in a game like Frostpunk, with its cold, industrial look, tells you everything you need to know about that grim, survivalist world.
And then, of course, there's everything you hear. Music is just massive for setting a tone. I mean, anyone who's played World of Warcraft knows that feeling, right? The calm, peaceful music of Elwynn Forest versus those thundering, intimidating drums of the Horde. And sound can also tell its own little story, like that distinct audio cue that tells you an enemy is right around the corner. That's the story of immediate danger.
But let's be real. Visuals and audio, those are tools that movies use too. The most powerful and the most unique tool in the narrative designer's entire kit is something only games can do, and that's the gameplay itself.
This is where we get into something called narrative mechanics. This is when the very act of playing the game, the rules you have to follow, is the story. The plot and the gameplay become the exact same thing. And this is so powerful because it makes you feel the story. You feel the struggle. You feel the weight of a choice. The story becomes something you have to earn through your own actions. Okay, a perfect, and I mean perfect example of this is the game Hades. In that game, you are expected to die a lot. But here's the genius part. Dying isn't failure. It's how the story moves forward. Every time you die and get sent back to the start, you unlock new conversations, you build relationships, you learn more about this world. It's just brilliant. The core mechanic of dying becomes the engine that drives the entire story.
So what happens when you put all of these tools together? The visuals, the sound, the gameplay? Well, it totally changes your role as a player. You stop being just a member of the audience, and you become something so much more.
I want you to think about these massive games like Civilization or Crusader Kings. There's no main plot, not really. Instead, the designers have built this incredibly complex sandbox of systems, politics, war, relationships, and they basically just hand you the keys. The story is the one-of-a-kind history that you create by playing inside that sandbox. So when you boil it all down, you start to see that the whole goal has shifted. It's not about a developer just passively telling you a story that they wrote. The real magic, the whole point of great narrative design, is that it gives you the tools, the world, and the context to become the co-author of your own epic adventure, one that is completely, 100% uniquely yours. So the next time you pick up a controller, try to look beyond the dialogue.
Really pay attention to the architecture. Listen to the sound in a quiet moment. Think about how a game mechanic actually makes you feel. Because that, right there, is where the deepest stories are being told. So let me ask you, what's one detail, no text, in a game that's made a story unforgettable for you?